What timeline? You're 12 weeks pregnant. That means conception happened in early January. I was in Chicago the entire first 2 weeks of January. I have receipts, flight confirmations, hotel records, and about 40 witnesses who saw me there every single day. Ariana's face went pale. Bronson, I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. I wasn't physically present during the conception window. So either we're dealing with an immaculate conception, or you need to tell me the truth. You're being ridiculous. Maybe the dates are off. Maybe I'm not as far along as. I also found bank statements. He opened the folder, showing her the highlighted charges. Romano's Ristorante, Hotel Magnolia, K Jewelers. All during my Chicago trip. All charged to our joint account. And all of them have a secondary cardholder name attached, Logan Pike. Her coffee mug trembled slightly in her hands. Who is Logan Pike, Ariana? A friend. Just a friend who needed. Don't. His voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. Don't insult my intelligence. I found 8 months of charges. Hotels, dinners, gifts. All corresponding exactly with my travel dates. You've been having an affair. The silence stretched between them. Finally she set down the mug. You're always gone, Bronson. You're never here. You care more about your spreadsheets than. This isn't about our marriage problems. This is about paternity. Whose baby is it? Her eyes filled with tears, but they looked more like panic than sadness. Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to ruin everything? Answer the question. You're being controlling. This is exactly why I. Ariana. Whose baby? It. The tears spilled over. Logan's, she whispered. It's Logan's baby. The confirmation hit him in the chest even though he'd already known. Hearing it out loud was different. I need you to leave, he said quietly. Pack a bag. Go stay with your sister. We're done. Bronson, please. Just listen. She reached for his arm. Logan isn't ready for this. He's not stable. He doesn't have a good job. He's not like you. What does that mean? It means I made a mistake, okay? But you could still be this baby's father. You could. Are you seriously asking me to raise another man's child and pretend it's mine? I'm asking you to save our family. Her voice rose, desperate now. You'd be a good father, Bronson. You're stable. You have a career. You could give this baby everything. Logan can't do that. So your plan was to commit paternity fraud and trap me into 18 years of raising a child that isn't mine? That's not what I. Get out. Now. She stared at him, mascara running down her cheeks. Bronson, please. We can work through this. We can. Leave. Or I will. She grabbed her purse and walked out. Bronson stood in the kitchen, listening to her car pull away. Then he picked up his phone and dialed. Miles? It's Bronson. I need a lawyer. Family law. And I need one today. The legal wake-up call. Miles Chin had been Bronson's college roommate and remained one of his closest friends, even though life had taken them in different directions. Miles had gone to law school, specializing in family law, while Bronson had climbed the corporate finance ladder. They still met for basketball every other week. They met at Miles' office that evening. Miles listened to the entire story without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When Bronson finished, Miles leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. Okay. First of all, I'm sorry, man. This is brutal. I need to know my legal exposure. Smart. Because you're in more danger than you think. Miles flipped open his laptop. Do you know what paternity presumption is? No. It's a legal doctrine that says if a child is born during a marriage, or within 300 days after a divorce, the husband is automatically presumed to be the legal father. Automatically. By default. Regardless of biology. Bronson felt his stomach drop. Even if I can prove I'm not the biological father? Even then. Presumption can be overcome, but it requires a court order. And here's the kicker. In this state, if you're still legally married when that baby is born, your name goes on the birth certificate. By default. Without your consent. That's insane. That's family law. It's designed to protect children by ensuring they have a legal father who's financially responsible. But it can absolutely be weaponized in situations like yours. So what do I do? Miles grabbed his legal pad and started writing. First, we file for legal separation immediately. Today if possible. That starts the clock and establishes that you're not cohabitating. Second, we request an emergency injunction to prevent your name from being placed on the birth certificate. Third, We gather every piece of evidence you have and prepare for a paternity hearing. A hearing? You'll need a court order explicitly stating that you are not the legal father. Otherwise, even if you divorce her, if that baby is born while you're still legally married, you're on the hook. Child support, medical expenses, college, all of it. For 18 years. Minimum. In some cases, child support extends into the kids' 20s if they're in college. Bronson felt the room spin slightly. She was going to trap me. That's exactly what she was going to do. And honestly, it works more often than you'd think. A lot of guys don't know about paternity presumption until it's too late. By the time they figure it out, their name is already on the birth certificate. The courts consider them the established father, and overturning that becomes extremely difficult. What do I need to do right now? Right now? Nothing until morning. But first thing tomorrow we file for legal separation. And Bronson? Miles looked at him seriously. Don't sign anything. If she brings you any paperwork, birth certificate acknowledgment, voluntary paternity forms, anything, do not sign it. Don't even touch it. Got it? And keep gathering evidence. Financial records, location data, communications, everything. We're going to need to prove not just that you're not the biological father, but that there was deliberate deception. That matters in how the court rules. Bronson nodded, his mind already cataloging what else he needed to find. One more thing, Miles added. If she tries to contact you, keep records of everything. If she admits anything in text or voicemail, save it. If you live in a one-party consent state, which we do, you can legally record in-person conversations without her knowledge. That could be crucial. I'll document everything. Miles gave him a grim smile. I know you will. That's why you're going to win this. Digging deeper. Over the next week, while Miles prepared the legal separation paperwork, Bronson did what he did best. He investigated. He pulled every bank statement going back 18 months. He downloaded credit card transaction histories. He accessed their shared cloud storage and found folders he'd never noticed before. Photo albums with names like Weekend Getaway and Downtown Adventures dated during his business trips. The affair wasn't recent. It had been going on for at least 8 months, possibly longer. He found deleted text messages in a cloud backup he'd set up months ago for data preservation purposes. The messages painted a picture of a relationship that was far more than physical. Inside jokes. Pet names. I miss you texts. Plans for future trips. Digging deeper. Over the next week, while Miles prepared the legal separation paperwork, Bronson did what he did best. He investigated. He pulled every bank statement going back 18 months. He downloaded credit card transaction histories. He accessed their shared cloud storage and found folders he'd never noticed before. Photo albums with names like Weekend Getaway and Downtown Adventures dated during his business trips. The affair wasn't recent. It had been going on for at least 8 months, possibly longer. He found deleted text messages in a cloud backup he'd set up months ago for data preservation purposes. The messages painted a picture of a relationship that was far more than physical. Inside jokes. Pet names. I miss you texts. Plans for future trips. One text from Ariana to Logan, dated January 5th. He's gone until the 14th. We have the whole week. Another from Logan to Ariana. Told my coworker about us. She thinks we should just go for it. Another from Ariana, February 10th. I'm late. Taking a test tomorrow. Don't freak out. Logan's response, whatever happens, we'll figure it out. Ariana's reply, you mean we'll figure it out or I'll figure it out? 3 dots. Then, let's see what the test says first. Bronson saved everything. Screenshots with timestamps. PDF exports. Printed copies stored in a locked filing cabinet. But one message chain stopped him cold. March 3rd, just 3 weeks ago. Logan, did you talk to him yet? Ariana, no. I'm going to wait until after the appointment. Make sure everything's okay first. Logan, and if he asks questions? Ariana, he won't. He's been traveling so much he probably doesn't even remember when we last had sex. Logan, and if he does the math? Ariana, then I'll handle it. Trust me. He's not going to walk away from his child. Rebecca Torres works at Meridian Freight Solutions. She's in the same office as Logan Pike. The pieces clicked together. She notarized a forged document for him. That's exactly what happened. And we can prove it. This just became a criminal case. Bronson felt a wave of vindication mixed with fury. This wasn't just an affair that got out of hand. This was coordinated, premeditated fraud. What else do you need? Bronson asked. Everything you've got. bank records, text messages, this forged document, your travel records. And we're going to subpoena the prenatal clinic for their records. If there are more forged documents, we need to find them. Over the next month, as Ariana's pregnancy progressed and the court date approached, Miles and Bronson built their case with the precision of a surgical strike. They compiled a 3-inch binder of evidence, indexed and cross-referenced. Section 1. Timeline Evidence. Bronson's work calendar showing Chicago trip, January 2-14 flight confirmations with timestamps, hotel receipts with daily charges, conference attendance records, photos with metadata showing Chicago locations, credit card charges in Chicago matching his presence, medical conception window. January 1-14 conclusion. Physical impossibility of paternity, financial records. Joint account statements, December through March highlighted suspicious charges during Bronson's absences, credit card transaction details showing Logan Pike as secondary cardholder, total marital funds spent on affair. $8,347.82 pattern analysis showing charges corresponding exclusively to Bronson's travel date. Section 3. Communications evidence. Recovered text messages between Ariana and Logan, specific message dated March 3 discussing plan to pass child off as Bronson's, voicemails from Logan, obtained via subpoena. Email exchanges about hotel reservations, all time-stamped and authenticated. Section 4. Recorded admission. Audio recording of March 26 confrontation, legally recorded in one-party consent state. Ariana's clear verbal admission, Logan's. It's Logan's baby. Her subsequent request for Bronson to raise the child anyway, transcription included with timestamps. Section 5. Forgery evidence. Original forged voluntary acknowledgment of paternity form, handwriting analysis report comparing signatures, notary license verification for Rebecca Torres, employment records linking Rebecca Torres to Logan Pike's workplace, witness statement from Bronson affirming he never signed the document, photos showing the document was mailed to Bronson's work address. Section 6. Medical records. Subpoena response from Dr. Patricia Chin, prenatal care physician, sworn affidavit from Dr. Chin. Miles had initially worried about whether the doctor would cooperate, but Dr. Chin had been appalled when she learned about the forged documents. Her sworn affidavit was damning. I, Dr. Patricia Chin, MD, do hereby swear under penalty of perjury. 1. I have been providing prenatal care to Ariana Sanders since February 20, 2025. 2. I have never met or spoken with Bronson Sanders. 3. The signatures on file purporting to be from Bronson Sanders do not match the signature on his insurance verification documents. 4. The voluntary acknowledgment of paternity form dated March 15 was not notarized or signed in my presence or in my office. 5. Insurance was processed using Bronson Sanders' information without proper authorization forms. 6. The dates on several forms in the patient file are inconsistent with appointment records and appear to have been backdated. Dr. Chen's professional reputation and detailed records turned her testimony into the smoking gun. This is airtight, Miles said, reviewing the binder one final time before the hearing. I've handled dozens of paternity cases. I've never seen evidence this comprehensive. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. Good. Because Ariana's attorney is going to come at us hard. They're going to argue presumption of paternity, best interests of the child, request child support pending DNA testing, all of it. We need to preempt every single argument. What are our odds? Miles looked at him seriously. With evidence this strong? If the judge follows the law, you walk away clean. But family court can be unpredictable. Some judges prioritize child welfare over justice. We need to be prepared for anything. The doctor's testimony. The night before the hearing, Miles called with an update. Dr. Chin agreed to appear in person if needed. She's not happy about how her patient file was manipulated. She said fraud like this undermines the integrity of the medical system. Will we need her to testify? Maybe not. Her affidavit might be enough. But having her available is a huge advantage. Judges take physician testimony very seriously, especially when it involves their own records being falsified. Bronson felt a weight lift slightly. Every piece of evidence, every witness, every document brought him closer to freedom. Tomorrow's the day, Miles said. Get some sleep. We're going to need you sharp. But Bronson didn't sleep much that night. He kept replaying scenarios, reviewing evidence, preparing for questions he might be asked. By morning he was exhausted but focused. It was time to face Ariana in court. Honestly, what would you do in this situation? Would you have confronted her immediately, or gathered more evidence first? And could you ever forgive a betrayal this calculated? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how different people would handle discovering something like this. Every message from Logan strengthened Bronson's resolve. This wasn't just about protecting himself anymore. It was about refusing to be manipulated by people who viewed parenthood as a financial transaction rather than a lifelong commitment. The morning of the hearing, Bronson stood in front of his bathroom mirror in a charcoal gray suit, straightening his tie. His reflection stared back at him, tired eyes, tension in his jaw, but underneath it all, a cold determination. He'd spent his entire adult life building systems, analyzing data, finding truth in numbers. Now he'd apply those same skills to dismantle a lie that had nearly destroyed him. Miles picked him up at 8 a.m. "You ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be." "Remember, answer only what's asked. Don't volunteer information. Stay calm. Let the evidence speak for itself." "Got it?" They drove to the courthouse in silence. Opening statements. The courtroom was smaller than Bronson expected. Pale wood paneling, fluorescent lights, a judge's bench that seemed to loom over everything. About a dozen chairs for observers, most of them empty except for a court reporter and a law clerk. Judge Patricia Morrison presided, a woman in her late 50s with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and reading glasses perched on her nose. She had a reputation, Miles had told him, for being thorough, impatient with nonsense, and extremely protective of courtroom decorum. Ariana sat at the opposing counsel's table with her attorney, Marcus Brennan, a man in his 40s wearing an expensive suit and a practiced expression of sympathetic concern. Ariana looked 6 months pregnant now, wearing a conservative navy dress and minimal makeup. She'd clearly been coached to appear sympathetic. She didn't look at Bronson when he entered. Judge Morrison called the hearing to order. "This is a paternity establishment hearing in the matter of Sanders versus Sanders. Mr. Brennan, you're representing Mrs. Sanders. Mr. Chin, you're representing Mr. Sanders. I've reviewed the initial filings. Mr. Brennan, you're opening?" Marcus Brennan stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. "Thank you, Your Honor. This case is quite simple. My client, Ariana Sanders, is 6 months pregnant. She has been married to Bronson Sanders for 7 years. Under state law, there is a presumption of paternity for any child born during a marriage. Mr. Sanders is attempting to avoid his legal and moral responsibilities as a father based on unsubstantiated suspicions and timeline calculations that are, frankly, speculative at best." He gestured toward Ariana, who lowered her eyes demurely. "My client admits there were marital difficulties. She admits there was a brief indiscretion. But those difficulties do not negate Mr. Sanders' obligation to the child that will be born into this marriage. The presumption of paternity exists to protect children, Your Honor, and we ask that the court uphold that presumption. Mrs. Sanders is not asking for anything except what the law already provides: recognition that Mr. Sanders is the legal father, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. The best interests of the child must come first." He sat down. Miles stood, and Bronson could see the prosecutor in him emerging, the sharpness, the precision. "Your Honor, this case is not simple, and it is not about marital difficulties. This case is about systematic, premeditated fraud. The evidence will show that Mr. Sanders could not possibly be the biological father of this child because he was 800 miles away during the entire conception window. The evidence will show that Mrs. Sanders carried on an 8-month affair funded by marital assets. The evidence will show that Mrs. Sanders and her paramour discussed a plan to fraudulently pass off the child as Mr. Sanders. And most critically, the evidence will show that forged legal documents, including a falsified paternity acknowledgment, were created in an attempt to trap Mr. Sanders into legal fatherhood." Bronson saw Judge Morrison's eyebrows rise slightly. "Your Honor, while the law presumes paternity in marriage, that presumption can and should be overcome when there is clear evidence of impossibility and deliberate deception. We will present timeline evidence, financial records, recorded admissions, and forged legal documents that will demonstrate beyond any doubt that Mr. Sanders is not the father and that there was a coordinated effort to defraud him. We ask that the court issue an order declaring no presumption of paternity and absolving Mr. Sanders of all legal and financial responsibility for this child." Miles sat down. Judge Morrison looked at both attorneys. "This is a preliminary hearing to determine whether presumption of paternity applies. Let's proceed with evidence. Mr. Chin, call your first witness." "Your Honor, we'd like to call Bronson Sanders." Evidence presentation. Bronson took the stand and was sworn in. Miles approached with a tablet containing their evidence binder. "Mr. Sanders, please tell the court about your work schedule in early January of this year." Bronson took a breath and began. I'm a senior financial analyst at Meridian Corporate. From January 2nd through January 14th, I attended our annual corporate strategy conference in Chicago. I was required to be there for the entire duration. And can you prove your presence in Chicago during those dates? Yes. I have flight confirmations, hotel receipts with daily charges, conference attendance records, and approximately 40 witnesses who can verify I was there every single day. Miles displayed the documents on a screen for the judge. Flight itinerary. Hotel bill showing charges from January 2nd to 14th. Conference badge with daily check-ins. Photos with timestamp metadata showing Chicago landmarks. Your Honor, Miles continued, medical testimony establishes that the conception window for this pregnancy was January 1st through January 14th. Mr. Sanders was not physically present during that entire period. It is a biological impossibility for him to be the father. Judge Morrison leaned forward, studying the documents. Mr. Brennan, do you dispute the travel records? Marcus Brennan stood. Your Honor, we don't dispute that Mr. Sanders traveled. However, conception windows are estimates. They're not exact science. It's possible. It's possible nothing, Miles interrupted. We have the medical records from Dr. Patricia Chin establishing the conception date based on ultrasound measurements. Those measurements are accurate to within days. Mr. Sanders was verifiably 800 miles away during the only possible conception window. Judge Morrison nodded. Continue, Mr. Chin. Miles pulled up the next set of evidence. Now, Mr. Sanders, let's discuss the financial records. The bank statements appeared on the screen with highlighted charges. Can you explain these highlighted transactions? Those are charges made during my absence to our joint account. Romano's Ristorante, Hotel Magnolia, K Jewelers, several bars and restaurants. None of these charges were made by me. They were made by my wife and a man named Logan Pike. How do you know Logan Pike made these charges? The credit card company provided transaction details showing him as the secondary cardholder on several receipts. He was using our joint credit card. Marcus Brennan stood. Objection, Your Honor. The presence of financial charges doesn't prove paternity one way or another. It proves motive and pattern of behavior, Miles countered. It shows a long-term affair funded by marital assets. It goes to credibility and intent. I'll allow it, Judge Morrison said. Continue. Miles displayed a summary chart. Your Honor, over 8 months, $8,347.82 in marital funds were spent on this affair. Hotels, dinners, gifts, entertainment. Every single charge corresponds to dates when Mr. Sanders was traveling for work. The judge studied the chart, her expression hardening. Now, Mr. Sanders, did you have a conversation with your wife on March 26th of this year? Yes. Did you record that conversation? Yes. We live in a one-party consent state. I recorded it legally. And what did she say during that conversation? Bronson's voice was steady. I confronted her with the timeline evidence and the financial records. I asked her directly whose baby it was. She said, and I quote, Logan's. It's Logan's baby. Miles pressed a button. Ariana's voice filled the courtroom from the audio recording. Logan's. It's Logan's baby. There was a pause on the recording, then Bronson's voice. I need you to leave. Ariana's voice, desperate. Logan isn't ready for this. He's not stable. He doesn't have a good job. He's not like you. Bronson's voice. What does that mean? Ariana, it means I made a mistake, okay? But you could still be this baby's father. You could. Bronson, are you seriously asking me to raise another man's child and pretend it's mine? Ariana, I'm asking you to save our family. You'd be a good father, Bronson. You're stable. You have a career. You could give this baby everything. Logan can't do that. Miles stopped the recording. The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison's expression was completely neutral, but her pen was moving rapidly across her notepad. Bronson glanced at Ariana. She was staring at the table, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Your Honor, Miles said, that is an explicit admission from Mrs. Sanders that Logan Pike is the biological father, combined with a request that Mr. Sanders commit paternity fraud by raising the child anyway. Marcus Brennan stood quickly. Your Honor, my client was under emotional duress during that conversation. She was confused, upset. She was quite clear, Judge Morrison said coldly. The recording speaks for itself. Continue, Mr. Chin. Miles pulled up the text messages. We also have recovered text messages between Mrs. Sanders and Mr. Pike discussing their plan. He highlighted the March 3rd exchange and read it aloud. Logan, and if he does the math? Ariana, then I'll handle it. Trust me. He's not going to walk away from his child. Logan, it's my child. Ariana, on paper it'll be his. That's the whole point. Judge Morrison leaned back in her chair. On paper it'll be his. That's the whole point. She repeated it slowly, looking at Ariana. Mrs. Sanders, did you write that text message? Ariana looked at her attorney helplessly. Marcus cleared his throat. Your Honor, we'd prefer not to have my client testify at this preliminary. I'm not asking her to testify. I'm asking her to confirm or deny that text message. Mrs. Sanders? Ariana's voice was barely a whisper. I don't remember. You don't remember discussing a plan to fraudulently establish paternity? We were just talking. It didn't mean. Yes or no, Mrs. Sanders? Did you discuss passing off Mr. Pike's child as your husband's? A long pause. Yes. Judge Morrison made another note. The ruling reverberated through every aspect of the case. Within a week, the district attorney's office opened a criminal investigation into the forged paternity acknowledgment. Rebecca Torres, the notary who'd stamped the document, was questioned and immediately pointed to Logan Pike, claiming he'd told her it was a legitimate form for his girlfriend's husband who couldn't make it to the appointment. Logan was charged with forgery and conspiracy to commit fraud. Rebecca was charged with notary fraud and surrendered her license. Both faced fines and potential jail time. Ariana's legal situation worsened rapidly. The divorce proceedings, which had been filed the day after the paternity hearing, heavily favored Bronson. The court's formal finding of fraud essentially destroyed her credibility on all fronts. Asset division was brutal. The house, purchased with Bronson's down payment and substantially paid down with his income, was awarded to Bronson with Ariana receiving a minimal equity share. Retirement accounts were split, but Bronson retained the larger portion. The restitution order for the $8,347.82 spent on the affair was just the beginning. Ariana's attorney negotiated a settlement that required her to waive all claims to spousal support in exchange for Bronson not pursuing additional financial damages for emotional distress. She signed it without contesting. But the social consequences hit her harder than the financial ones. Word of the case spread through their social circle quickly. Friends who'd known them as a couple began asking questions. When the details emerged, the affair, the fraud, the forged documents, the support Ariana might have expected as a pregnant woman going through a divorce evaporated. Her own family was mortified. Her mother stopped taking her calls for 3 weeks. Her father, a retired police officer, was particularly disgusted by the criminal fraud aspect. Ariana moved in with her sister, who made it clear the arrangement was temporary. And Logan? Logan disappeared from her life almost immediately after the ruling. He'd been subpoenaed to appear at the hearing but had failed to show. After Judge Morrison's ruling identified him as the biological father, he went silent. Blocked Ariana's number. Stopped responding to messages. Deleted his social media accounts. When Ariana's attorney finally tracked him down to serve him with paternity and child support paperwork, Logan initially tried to deny he was the father. It took a court-ordered DNA test, administered 3 days after the baby was born, to legally establish what everyone already knew. Logan Michael Pike was the biological father. The child, a baby girl, was born in June. Her birth certificate listed only her mother's name initially. After the DNA results, Logan's name was added by court order. Logan was ordered to pay child support, $847 per month, based on his modest income as a logistics coordinator. He paid exactly $0 voluntarily. His wages were garnished. The irony wasn't lost on Bronson when Miles told him. Ariana had tried to trap him into a lifetime of financial responsibility, and now she was fighting tooth and nail to extract the bare minimum from the actual father. She calls my office about once a month, Miles told Bronson over drinks one evening, asking if there's any way to revisit the case. I tell her the same thing every time, the ruling is final. Does she ask about me? Sometimes. I don't tell her anything. Good. Bronson's new beginning. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Bronson bought a house. Not the house. He'd sold the marital home and everything in it, keeping only his clothes, his books, and his meticulously organized filing cabinets. He wanted no reminders. The new house was a modest 3-bedroom craftsman in a quiet neighborhood across town. It had good bones but needed work. Outdated kitchen, a backyard that was mostly weeds, paint that hadn't been updated since the 90s. Bronson didn't mind. He liked projects. He liked rebuilding. He spent weekends sanding cabinets, painting walls, pulling up carpet to reveal original hardwood floors. Each improvement felt like progress, like reclaiming his life one room at a time. His colleagues at work noticed the change in him. He was still analytical, still methodical, but something had shifted. He smiled more. He joined the office softball league. He volunteered to mentor junior analysts. His boss pulled him aside one day. "Whatever you're going through, Sanders, it's working for you. Your last 3 reports were exceptional. Keep it up." 2 months later, Bronson was promoted to senior financial director. The raise was substantial, enough that he paid off his car and started seriously contributing to investments he'd neglected during the marriage. He started therapy with a psychologist who specialized in betrayal trauma. Once a week, Bronson sat in a comfortable chair in an office that smelled like lavender and talked about trust, about red flags he'd missed, about rebuilding his sense of self. "You talk about what happened like you're analyzing data," Dr. Reeves observed one session. "That's how I process things." "I know. But data doesn't have feelings." "You do." Bronson was quiet for a moment. "I was angry for a long time. Then I was just tired. Now I'm just ready to move forward." "What does moving forward look like?" "I don't know yet. But I know what it doesn't look like." Friends started trying to set him up on dates. He declined most of them, but eventually agreed to coffee with a woman named Sarah who worked in his company's marketing department. She was smart, funny, and didn't push when he said he wasn't ready for anything serious. They became friends. Sometimes they'd grab lunch. She introduced him to her book club. He taught her how to read financial statements for fun, which made her laugh. "You really are a spreadsheet nerd," she teased. Proudly. Miles remained his closest confidant. They still played basketball, though now Bronson won more often. "You're getting competitive in your old age," Miles observed after Bronson hit 3 three-pointers in a row. "I'm 34. That's not old. It's old in basketball years." Miles passed him the ball. "You doing okay though?" "Really?" "Yeah," Bronson said and meant it. "I really am." But the most meaningful moment of his new beginning came on a Saturday morning in October, 8 months after the divorce was final. Bronson stood in his backyard with a shovel, a bag of soil, and a small cedar sapling he'd bought from a local nursery. He'd chosen cedar deliberately. The nursery owner had explained that cedars grow slowly but steadily, deepening their roots year after year, becoming more stable and resilient with time. They don't rush. They don't depend on perfect conditions. They just grow with patience and integrity. Bronson dug the hole carefully, measuring twice to ensure the right depth. He placed the sapling, filled in the soil, packed it down gently. He watered it thoroughly. Then he stood back and looked at it. This small tree that would outlive him, that would grow into something strong and permanent if he tended it properly. It was the first living thing he'd planted in his new life. A symbol of honest growth. Of roots that go deep instead of spreading shallow. Of something that becomes what it's meant to be without manipulation or lies. He texted a photo to Miles. "New project." Miles responded immediately, "Cedar tree? That's very wise old man of you." Bronson smiled. Seemed appropriate. "You're going to be fine, Bronson. Better than fine." "I know." And he did know. Not because the pain was gone, some of it probably always would be there, a scar that ached sometimes. But because he'd learned something essential about himself. He could face truth, however brutal, and come out the other side intact. Legal and systemic implications. The case became something of a landmark in local family law circles. Miles used it in presentations at legal conferences, Sanders versus Sanders, when paternity presumption meets systematic fraud. He anonymized the names, but the facts spoke for themselves. Other attorneys started citing Judge Morrison's ruling in similar cases. The phrase, "fraud cannot form the basis of legal obligation," appeared in briefs across the state. But the case also highlighted serious gaps in family law protections. Bronson learned that his situation wasn't unique. Every year, thousands of men were trapped by paternity presumption laws, legally declared fathers of children they didn't biologically father, often without their knowledge until it was too late. In some states, even DNA evidence proving non-paternity wasn't enough to overturn paternity once it was legally established. If a man's name was on a birth certificate and he'd acted as the father, even for a few months, some courts ruled it was in the best interest of the child to maintain that legal relationship, regardless of biological truth. Bronson found online support groups full of men in similar situations. Men who'd discovered infidelity years later, men who'd raised children for a decade before learning the truth, Men who were legally obligated to pay child support for children they'd never met because their ex-wives had listed them as fathers without their knowledge. The system, he realized, was designed with good intentions, protecting children from abandonment, ensuring financial support, but those same protections could be weaponized by people acting in bad faith. He started making modest donations to legal reform organizations working on paternity law changes. Mandatory DNA testing at birth before establishing paternity, shorter windows for paternity disestablishment when fraud is proven, better protections against forged paternity acknowledgments, clearer legal pathways for men to challenge paternity, penalties for deliberate paternity fraud. Miles told him about a case he'd recently taken pro bono. A man who discovered through a 23andMe test that his 15-year-old daughter wasn't biologically his. The man still wanted to maintain the relationship. He'd raised her, he loved her. But his ex-wife was now demanding increased child support based on his recent promotion. The courts were sympathetic but bound by precedent. Cases like yours, Miles said, they help. They establish that fraud matters. That evidence matters. That the system can work when someone fights back with documentation. But how many people don't have documentation? Don't keep records? Too many. Bronson thought about that often. He'd been lucky that his analytical nature had made him document everything, lucky that he'd discovered the truth before the baby was born, lucky that he had a friend who was also a family law attorney. How many men didn't have those advantages? Lessons and reflections. A year after the verdict, Bronson sat in his backyard, watching the cedar tree sway in an autumn breeze. It had grown about 6 inches, not dramatic but steady. Honest growth. He thought about what he'd learned. First, trust is essential, but blind trust is dangerous. The version of himself that existed before Ariana, the one who never questioned, never verified, never thought to look at bank statements, that version was naive. Not stupid, not weak, but naive. Second, documentation isn't paranoia. It's protection. Every receipt, every record, every backup file had been essential. His methodical nature, which Ariana had mocked, had saved him. Third, stay calm under pressure. The version of himself that wanted to scream, to rage, to confront Ariana in the moment of discovery, that version would have lost. By staying systematic, by gathering evidence before acting, he'd maintained control of the situation. Fourth, get professional help immediately. Without Miles, Bronson would have missed critical legal deadlines. Without Dr. Reeves, he'd still be processing the trauma in unhealthy ways. Pride wasn't worth the cost of facing this alone. Fifth, the truth always leaves evidence. Ariana and Logan had tried to cover their tracks, but they'd left a trail, financial, digital, physical. Truth has a weight that lies can't replicate forever. And finally, some betrayals can't be forgiven, and that's okay. People had told him he should work on forgiveness, or let go of anger for his own peace. But Bronson didn't feel angry anymore. He felt resolved. He'd made peace with what happened by refusing to let it define him, by rebuilding deliberately and authentically. Forgiveness, he decided, wasn't necessary for healing. Acceptance was. He accepted that Ariana had made choices that revealed her character. He accepted that Logan was a coward who'd abandoned his own child. He accepted that the legal system, while imperfect, had ultimately worked when presented with overwhelming evidence. And he accepted that his life now, quieter, simpler, more intentional, was better than the life he'd lost. Dr. Reeves had asked him in their last session, "What would you tell someone going through something similar?" Bronson had thought carefully before answering. "I'd tell them to trust their instincts when something feels wrong. Document everything before confronting anyone. Get a lawyer immediately, don't try to handle it alone. Know your state's paternity laws before you're in crisis. And understand that you can't logic someone into being a decent person. If someone is willing to betray you once, they'll do it again unless the consequences are severe enough to stop them." He paused, then added, "And I'd tell them that you can survive this. It won't feel like it at first. But if you stay methodical, stay honest, stay focused on protecting yourself, you'll come out the other side." Dr. Reeves had smiled. That's good advice. Hard-earned advice. Now, sitting in his backyard with the cedar tree growing steadily in the earth, Bronson thought about the life he was building. Not the life he'd planned with Ariana, the house in the suburbs, the 2 kids, the white picket fence. That life had been built on lies. This life was built on truth. Smaller maybe. Quieter definitely. But real. His phone buzzed. "Sarah from the book club. Hey, we're doing a bonfire at my place Saturday. You should come. No pressure." Bronson smiled and typed back, "I'll be there." He looked at the cedar tree one more time. It would take years to mature, decades to reach its full height. But it would get there, slowly and steadily, putting down roots that went deep instead of spreading thin. He could do the same. His final thought as he walked back into his house was the one that had sustained him through everything. Love without truth is a contract I won't sign. Final question for you all. Do you think Bronson's story will make him too guarded in future relationships, or is this level of caution now justified? Can someone come back from a betrayal this deep and still build healthy trust with someone new? Share your thoughts. I think this is where the real conversation begins. So that's the complete story of how Bronson Sanders escaped a paternity trap that could have derailed his entire life. From a calendar notification on an ordinary Saturday morning to a courtroom victory that freed him from 18 years of fraudulent obligation, this case shows us that truth, evidence, and systematic thinking can overcome even the most elaborate deceptions. Let's recap the key takeaways from this case, because they could save someone watching this video from the same nightmare. First, know your state's paternity presumption laws. In most states, if a child is born during a marriage, the husband is automatically the legal father, regardless of biology. This happens by default, without your consent, unless you take specific legal steps to prevent it. Second, document everything when trust is broken. Bank statements, location data, text messages, emails, receipts, every piece of evidence matters. Bronson's methodical documentation was the difference between freedom and 18 years of paying for someone else's child. Third, legal separation timing is critical. If Bronson had waited until after the baby was born, his legal situation would have been exponentially more complicated. In paternity cases, days and weeks matter. Fourth, fraud cannot form the basis of legal obligation. Judge Morrison's ruling established that the legal system will not reward deliberate deception. When you can prove systematic fraud with clear evidence, the law can and should protect you. Fifth, professional legal counsel is essential. Bronson's friendship with Miles gave him access to expertise that most people don't have. If you're facing a paternity dispute, a custody battle, or any family law crisis, get an attorney immediately. Don't try to navigate it alone. This story matters because it's not unique. Thousands of people face similar situations every year, and many of them don't have the resources, the knowledge, the documentation, or the support system to fight back effectively. If this video helps even one person recognize the warning signs, understand their legal rights, or realize they need to start documenting evidence, then the 20+ hours spent researching, scripting, verifying, and editing this was worth every single minute. What happened to everyone after the ruling? Ariana is raising her daughter with minimal involvement from Logan, who pays court-ordered child support through wage garnishment but has no relationship with his child. She's attempted multiple times to revisit the case, but the ruling is final. According to the last update, she's working 2 jobs and living with her sister. Logan Pike pled guilty to reduced charges related to the forged paternity document and received probation, community service, and a permanent mark on his criminal record. Rebecca Torres lost her notary license and paid significant fines. Both avoided jail time. And Bronson? Last I heard, he's thriving. The cedar tree in his backyard is growing strong. He's excelling at work. He's rebuilt his social life with boundaries that honor both openness and wisdom. He's cautious about dating, but he's open to it. And most importantly, he's at peace. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well, honestly, and on your own terms. If you found this story compelling, here's how you can help. Hit that like button. It genuinely helps the algorithm show this video to others who might need this information. The engagement metrics determine whether YouTube recommends this content to people searching for paternity law, family law resources, or stories about overcoming betrayal. Subscribe for more deep dive investigations into true stories that reveal how systems work and sometimes how they fail. We cover legal cases, corporate fraud, personal triumphs, and the kinds of stories that make you think differently about the world. Drop a comment sharing your perspective. I read every single one. What do you think about paternity presumption laws? Should they be reformed? What would you have done in Bronson's situation? The discussion in the comments is often as valuable as the video itself. And share this with someone who might benefit from understanding these legal protections. You never know who might need this information someday. Coming up next week, we're diving into another explosive case, this time involving corporate espionage, a whistleblower who risked everything to expose fraud at a Fortune 500 company, and a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of executive leadership. Billions of dollars were at stake. Careers were destroyed. And one person's decision to document everything brought the whole operation crashing down. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for being part of this community that values truth, justice, and the power of evidence. Remember, the truth always leaves a trail. Document it, protect it, and when necessary, fight for it. Until next time.